One thing I've seen a lot of on YouTube over the years is a lot of 20-something to 40-something-year-olds that have an entire YouTube channel dedicated to reviewing and looking back at some of the games from their childhoods, games that are intended for children, basically. Games like Sonic, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, games like that, like a lot of those platformers that have animals as the protagonist, E-rated games that are definitely not intended for people who are like in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, but rather people that are like, maybe 10 or younger. Now, you guys may have an idea of where you think this video is going. You think it's going to be me shaming people for playing games that are made for kids. Like, oh, grow the fuck up, guys. You people shouldn't be playing these games. That's not me. Plus, I even made a whole video, like, talking about why it's stupid to criticize people for playing games that they enjoy. Like, it's dumb. But I think it's rather just the whole YouTube side of it. People making 3-hour, 4-hour long videos breaking down these games that really just aren't that deep. And I really don't understand who takes the time to spend that long. Like, there's no way people watch these videos in one sitting. It has to be, right, like they watch a few minutes one day, then a few minutes the next day. Because there's no way anybody has the time or is willing to spend the time to watch a 5-hour long YouTube review of a game made like 25 years ago that was made for 7-year-olds. Even if you were a 7-year-old back then and now you're grown up and like just play the game instead of watching all that time of a YouTuber talking about it. Like, YouTube reviews are fine, obviously, but 4 hours long, or even like 2 hours long, 1 hour long, I think is too much also. So you guys know that almost a year ago I started a Let's Play channel, and a huge part of that channel is actually me going back and playing some of these games from my childhood. For example, Sonic Heroes. That was a game that, like, I consider one of my favorite games of all time. SpongeBob Battle for Bikini Bottom. Well, actually, no, I didn't get to that one yet. I played the SpongeBob movie video game, and I also played through the 2 Fairly Odd Parents games for PlayStation 2. And you know what? My opinion of each and every one of those games has changed drastically from the point when I was a kid, and my standards were so different and definitely a lot lower than they are today, So I just don't see the point, honestly, in like going back and being like, oh, guess what, guys? The game design, like the level design of this game is bad, and this is bad, and that's bad about this game. Like, yeah, it wasn't really intended to be like this meaningful, deep experience, like a well-crafted game. It was honestly like, yeah, it was a cash grab in a lot of these cases, especially if we're talking about licensed games. Even like with these Sonic games that are, they're not licensed games. That's like Sega's main moneymaker is Sonic the Hedgehog. But do you think that Sonic and the Black Knight, for example, the game for the Wii where you like swing your nunchuck around and your Wii remote and you're like swinging a sword, you think that type of game was really made for like people like you and me? They certainly weren't concerned about the reviews from 20-something-year-olds about how bad Sonic and the Black Knight was, and certainly not 15 years later, looking back at it. But you know what? When I was 11 years old, I liked Sonic and the Black Knight. 25 years old, playing it for the first time, if I never played it before, and if I was just playing it now, yeah, I probably wouldn't like it. So I think we need to recognize the generational gap and the age gap when we're having discussions about these types of games. Like, it just seems like a waste of time, in my opinion, like, to fixate so much on what was wrong with these games from the lens of someone who is older and I guess is, like, more sophisticated and therefore knows exactly what they want from a game, and they really have these high expectations. They want a good quality game, a good story, great platforming, or whatever, like great level design, and all of these things. But like a 7-year-old kid is not really going to care so much about all those things. Like, for example, Sonic Heroes is a game that I loved to death when I was a 6-year-old kid, when I played that game for the first time back in 2004. Yeah. Guess what? If that game came out today, and my 25-year-old self would be playing that game for the first time, I would not love that game very much, because it has a lot of problems when it comes to repetition, a lot of repetitiveness with the missions and the story, and a whole bunch of things that just feels like a complete waste of time. And, my current modern self, my older self, would not appreciate a whole lot of the gameplay elements and the like certain things that they did with that game. But When I was 6 and 7 years old, I couldn't give less of a shit about any of that. Same thing with the Fairly Odd Parents, what was it called? Breaking the Rules. That game, I went back and played that one also, and it has some really, really, really bad level design. Like, some of the worst that I've honestly ever seen. It's just so, it's not necessarily, like, horrible, actually. It's not like Bubsy 3D. It's more like just so bland and generic and boring that I just, like, I really struggled trying to play through these levels. But, again, when I was 6 years old, and The Fairly Odd Parents was, like, one of my favorite shows of all time, it was, like, it was 3 shows that I loved. SpongeBob, Fairly Odd Parents, and Jimmy Neutron. They had video games for all those shows, and I could, like, experience the world of those shows in a video game, and I can explore the world and do all these things, and, like, I love that. I fucking loved that when I was a kid. And being someone that did play those games back when they came out, playing them again, like, there is some positive experience with re-experiencing those games. But if I played those games blind for the first time, like, there are some kid platforming games that I played for the first time in my 20s, and I'm gonna say that I was not very impressed with pretty much all of them. Like, it's definitely a generational thing. It's definitely what you were exposed to at a certain point in your life is gonna determine whether or not you like this game or not. Even during my childhood, I could say that. Like, pretty much every Sonic game that I have played since I was 7 years old, I have always felt just wasn't on the same level as Sonic Heroes, which was, like, not just the first Sonic game I played, but also one of the first video games I ever played. So nostalgia, like, it definitely plays a big role in how you, like, your entire video game philosophy is definitely based off of the generation that you were brought up on and some of the first games that you played. You're always going to hold those games up on a pedestal over all the other ones. That's just how it is. I just kind of feel like it's beating on a dead horse when people fixate so much on these older games and how, yeah, they weren't as good as you thought they were because, yeah, there's actually all these problems with these games, but it's like, yeah, I mean, sure, but does it really matter at the end of the day? Does it really change anything? Does it change the enjoyment that you had with that game back in the day? No. And the fact of the matter is, the company that made these types of games, these licensed kid games, or just games that are made for kids, the developers and publishers are not going to look at some 20-something-year-old giving it a 4 out of 10 being like, guys, we really screwed this up here, man. You know, like, no, like, this game's not for you. They don't care if people outside their target demographic likes the game or not. I mean, if they like it and it sells more copies, then sure, that's good, but really, that's not their main intention. That's not their main focus. My 7-year-old self that was really bad at video games, and you can argue I still am bad, but I was definitely much worse back then. My playstyle back then definitely enjoyed, like, a more simple, basic level design that really wasn't that challenging and was very easy and didn't really offer that much, didn't really bring that much to the table. Like, yeah, I mean, my like, very low video game skills back then, and just me, like, just get really dipping my toes and starting to dabble into the world of video games. I like that. I like that game design back then. When I first played the boss fights in the Fairly Odd Parents game back in 2004, oh man, it was a real challenge for me, and I struggled to beat these bosses. Now, it's like a cakewalk and it's a joke. In my opinion, let me be clear, in my opinion, I'm not trying to say, oh, my opinion is king and my opinion is everything here. But just the way I see things is that, like, these people that are adults and their main focus is reviewing games that are made for children, it's just like, it doesn't really feel like it serves much of a purpose or adds that much value. Like, even if, like, you're a parent and you're watching these reviews to buy these games for your kids, you can't really know for sure if your kid's gonna really like that game or not. If we're talking about first-person shooters, RPGs, games that have, like, a very layered gameplay design and story, like, just a few games out of example, Doom Eternal, Call of Duty, and I would even say certain E-rated games like sports titles, FIFA, well, it's not FIFA anymore, it's EAFC, whatever, Madden, like, games like that, like, reviews can certainly be helpful, but if it's just, like, blatantly something that you can tell that it is for children, like the Hannah Montana Nintendo DS games or Dora the Explorer for PlayStation 1, like, those are the most extreme examples, but yeah, even games like Sonic the Hedgehog and Crash Bandicoot And I mean, Ratchet and Clank is kind of, it's blurring the lines a little bit because it does have a lot of adult humor in it. But a lot of these like kid platformer games, that seems to be like the main focus for a lot of these review channels. Yeah, the vast majority of them, I'd say 95% of them, are really just, you know, like 10 and below. That's the target demographic there. And while sure, there are a lot of games that even as a kid that I thought were like really, really bad and were a complete waste of money. I think of games like Codename Kids Next Door for the PlayStation 2. That's just a weird one that popped out of my head, but I remember hating that game so much. I remember a lot of like just weird games on the DS that I got because they looked cool and I ended up hating them completely. You know, there are a lot of games. Like, I didn't just because I was a little kid doesn't mean that I just loved every game that was out there. But I can guarantee you that I certainly didn't look up reviews online for them and really wouldn't care about what some older person thought about that game. I think it's pretty much guaranteed that if I'm 7 years old and I'm trying to get a video game and some 30-year-old says the game is not good, that 30-year-old and why they have determined that that game is bad wouldn't necessarily represent me and what I'm looking for in a game. It's certainly, there's nothing wrong with playing games that are, you know, maybe intended for younger people. I think at the same time, though, to like really like just go like in depth and try to criticize it and break down every single gameplay element and every single thing going on with the game and make like a 3-hour production on YouTube. I'm trying to figure out where the value is in that. And I'm someone that will humbly admit that a lot of these channels that I'm referring to, I'll be the first to admit that these channels are bigger and more successful than I will ever be. So, hey, credit to them. They like a lot of these people are making a good living out of this kind of thing. I'm just saying, like, as an audience member, not necessarily as a content creator, like looking at other content creators, but as someone who consumes and watches YouTube content, I really don't understand why people like even watch this content to begin with and why people like it. Get what I mean? Anyway, those are my thoughts on that. I'm going to make another video that's kind of like the opposite of this. I'm going to talk about whether or not children should play M-rated games. I think that's a topic I haven't really gotten into before, and I think that would be another interesting thing. So I'm going to talk about that very soon. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you all for watching, and I will catch you guys later. Peace.